The second year of the marriage, Ivana was born, and 3 years later, Beverly. After each confinement, the young mother had experienced an inexplicable despondency. Seizures of grief that sent her wandering from room to room in a hand-wringing daze. Between the births of Beverly and Nancy, 3 more years elapsed. And these were the years of the Sunday picnics and of summer excursions to Colorado, the years when she really ran her own home and was the happy center of it. But when Nancy, and then with Kenyon, the pattern of postnatal depression repeated itself, and following the birth of her son, the mood of misery that descended never altogether lifted. It lingered like a cloud that might rain or might not.
Postpartum depression is a form of severe depression that occurs after child delivery, interferes with daily functioning, and requires treatment. According to MedicineNet.com, a highly credible medical site, postpartum depression can occur a few days, weeks, even months after childbirth. A woman with postpartum depression may have feelings of anger, anxiety, guilt, hopelessness, loss of interest or pleasure from activities, mood swings, or panic attacks. Treatment requires diagnosis, counseling, and likely medication. Any woman who has just undergone childbirth is at risk of postpartum depression. This condition is one of the most crippling, prevalent disorders worldwide, and it's time it got the attention it deserves.
So what was your relationship with your partner like before you realized she had postpartum depression?
Before or after the baby came?
Before the baby came.
So before the baby came, things were great. We were at the end of the pregnancy, so it was very exciting. It was physically very hard for her and for me because I was, the assistant in the last trimester, which is physically hard for the woman. But day to day was great. We were very excited and looking forward to seeing what it was going to be like with the new baby, and nothing but positive, really.
And was there a shift in your relationship after you realized that she had postpartum depression and after the baby came?
I don't know that there was a shift in the relationship so much, but just the day-to-day reality of having a newborn baby just felt extremely hard. Everything about it just seemed like, oh my God, why is this so much harder than we anticipated? I don't think other people have it this hard. And of course, I didn't have the experience or the sense to even wonder whether it was postpartum depression. It just didn't even occur to me. It just felt like, wow, this having a baby stuff is really, really hard. That's kind of the sense I was getting from her, and that just sort of reinforced any feelings that I was having about it being hard too. And it was sort of just this reinforcing cycle that made it seem really hard to bear.
And so after you found out that she was suffering from postpartum depression, was there anything specific that you did to try to support her? Was there anything that you could do?
I don't know there was much I could do, except it definitely changed my perspective, and it was obviously a relief and sort of like a oh God moment. So it's like, oh, this is a thing that I've heard about for years, and I know it happens, and okay, this is what it feels like. And I knew I wanted to be supportive and had to be supportive, but I also felt like, okay, this is something that hopefully can in the long term get resolved.
There are numerous indicators as to whether or not a woman is likely to experience postpartum depression, including any previous symptoms of depression following childbirth, having family members that also suffer from depression, medical complications, or alcoholism.
I would say I had it probably for very intensely, very severely for about a month, but it took about 2 to 3 months for it to really lift completely.
And in this period of time, what symptoms did you suffer with?
I suffered with both a complete lack of feeling and yet also a feeling of complete heaviness and that my life was over. It was complete despair. It was feeling completely isolated and alone. It was a void of any hope. It was a void of any reason to look forward to the future. It felt very lonely. It was, I was in constant grief that my life was over. It was resentment that this squalling, needy little being had come into my life. I felt desperate. I felt like I was the only one who I knew who was feeling this way, and that because no one else could relate to me, it compacted my feelings of loneliness exponentially. Because I thought, because I couldn't explain it to anybody.
Do you have a circle of people who have suffered from the same thing that you have, that you can now like relate to and talk to about it? Because you said that when you suffered from it, you felt like you were really isolated and alone. Has that changed?
Well, it's changed because I no longer suffer from it.
Yes.
It changed when I was no longer suffering from it. But there have been many times since that experience, particularly in the first 2 to 3 years after having you, that I would mention to someone, oh, I suffered from a postpartum depression, and they would either admit, oh my goodness, I did too, or I can remember in particular at a party meeting a woman who was a nurse in a maternity ward, and who almost brought me to tears because she gripped my arm and she said, I'm so glad that you took it seriously. It is a very serious thing. I want you to really know that you did the right thing in reaching out and getting help, because it is a horrible, painful thing to experience. And I've had lots of conversations with women who I've met, gotten to know, who've become friends over the years since I had you. So I've had many instances. I don't currently have like a network of women with whom I discuss it, but I've had so many experiences of meeting or having conversations with women who had the same experience, which is always very affirming.
And so, what treatment did you go through to help you, to help the postpartum depression kind of cease?
I went on an antidepressant, an SSRI. I went on, specifically with Zoloft, when I realized, is it appropriate to tell you how I realized I was having?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So when you have a baby, you expect that you're going to be really sleep deprived, and have to get up all hours of the night and day and feed and care for this baby, this infant. But I was going to a new mother's support group, and the message we were given in the new mother's support group is, if within a 24-hour cycle you're getting 8 hours of sleep, even if it's broken up, that's great. You're like, you're going for the gold. You've done it. If you're getting 8 hours of sleep within a 24-hour period, even if it's broken up, then that's good. You're doing great. And that was happening for me. And there were some days when I would get more than 8 hours sleep. I was getting 10 hours of sleep, even though it was broken up. But I would still feel like when I woke up, I just didn't want to be doing my life. That whole feeling of desperation, of loneliness, of isolation, but at the same time feeling nothing would happen. So there was a day, actually it was September 11th, 2001, yes, that horrible day. And I got up feeling completely bleak and hopeless, and all of that horrible incident was going on, and I don't know why. It just, somehow it just clicked, and I thought, I'm getting enough sleep. I'm getting enough sleep to where I should have the energy. I shouldn't feel this tired. I shouldn't feel this crappy. I shouldn't be feeling this horrible all the time. So I locked myself in the bathroom and I called my doctor. Left a message, and I got a call back within 15 minutes, and she's asked me questions, including, so do you have help? Can you get breaks? Can you leave for an hour? Go get coffee? Can you leave the baby with someone? And my reality was, yeah, I had support. I had 2 sets of grandparents who were willing to help. And I told her that, and I said, but the problem is I have to come back, and I don't want to come back. So she said, I think you're right. I think you are suffering from a postpartum depression. And she got me on the antidepressant Zoloft, and complete efficacy happens at about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, I believe. But I started to feel an improvement within 2 weeks.
And so what was your, like, while all of this was happening, what was the relationship with Dad and, like, your mom and their grandparents like?
Well, of all of your grandparents, I'm closest to my mom.
Yes. Yeah.
And she came over on almost a daily basis, was willing to be here whenever I needed her, and was amazingly supportive. And so was your father. He was amazing. I can't imagine how painful and difficult it would be to see someone that you love behaving in that way and suffering in that way. And it would be both painful to watch and yet at the same time infuriating and frustrating, because it means that your partner, who's supposed to be taking care of this baby, me, isn't up to the job. And it's a big job.
Yeah.
And he had a full-time job. He was home for 3 weeks and then had to go back to work. So, he would, come home after a full day's work and then have to deal with me. So I know it was hard on him, but he also made it very clear that he understood completely, well, to the best of his ability, not having gone through it himself, that he understood what I was going through and was going to be there and supporting me and by my side until we came through it. So yeah, it was pretty terrific.
Postpartum depression affects a great number of women in the United States. Women with postpartum depression should not suffer and should not be blamed for their condition. Treatments vary from therapists to medications. If you know anyone with postpartum depression, please pass these numbers along. Thank you.